Well, like so many others of that background, he was a tailor and came over already believing in the importance of unions. As I said, he was philosophically basically a Bundist, which was good because those people who had any Bundist associations were inoculated against Bolshevism. It had no attraction to them. They knew it too well. And he became involved in the ILGWU, International Ladies Garment Workers Union, and in spite of his quite limited formal education, he rose up and became at least a local executive in that union. So coming into the mid to late 1920s, the other similar union was the Amalgamated Clothing Workers Union. I'm not sure really, I've never understood what the difference was. Was it just personalities, or was there some kind of political orientation slightly different between the two? But anyway, the Amalgamated determined to set up cooperative housing project in the extreme northern Bronx. And they went forward with this. It was permitted, first of all, because the Jerome Avenue subway had extended north. It was a connection with it was an extension of the Lexington Avenue subway into the far northern Bronx, and it reached Woodlawn sometime maybe around 1918, 1920, I don't remember the exact year. And that opened up this whole area of the Bronx that previously had been very thinly populated. It was really a continuation of Westchester, which it had once been. So prior to that in the Bronx, the South Bronx was urbanized, but north of that, the only real settlements were little communities that sprung up around the railroad stations, and the rest of it was all pretty open and undeveloped. So the Amalgamated bought a tract of land just south of Van Cortlandt Park. And a state law had been passed, I think in 1926, that made it possible to get mortgages and get loans, borrow money for cooperative housing. And they went ahead and erected this large housing complex near the Mosholu station on the subway and near the Jerome Park Reservoir and right across from Van Cortlandt Park, which I think is the largest park in New York City. It was all done quite rapidly. They erected this building in, I think, 1927. The architect was named, one of the architects was named Springsteen. Whether he was any relation to the pop singer, I have no idea. But it was a complex that took up almost an entire block in an early English style of architecture. And it was built as five, they called it buildings 1 to 5, but they were connected, so you couldn't see any break between 1 and 5. It may have just been 5 separate contracts, because everyone who lived there just called it the first building, and the next building they built was not the second, it was the 6th. Anyway, coming into around 1927, they were advertising for people to occupy these cooperative apartments, and my grandfather was not in the Amalgamated Union, he was in the ILGWU, but one of the policies was to open it to not only union members. So he signed up and took shares in it. What it was, they were not condominiums where the people owned their own apartment. What they owned was shares in a corporation, and the corporation owned the housing complex, and he had one share in it. Again, where the money came from to buy that, I never found out. But he was one of what they called the pioneers. In maybe 1928 or so, he and his family moved in. There were about 300 units, and he was one of the first people to move into that complex.